Greetings and welcome to the Goddess Breath podcast. I'm Dr. Mari Castle. Thank you for tuning in. Today I want to share with you what we spoke about a bit last week, just kind of recapping in the last episode that I spoke about the healing power of nature and how it helps us feel whole. How it holds both the masculine and feminine energies, how it soothes our nervous system simply by inviting us into its rhythmic cycles. So today, we're going to go a little deeper into one of the oldest stories ever recorded that go back to 5,000 years ago in the Sumerian culture, and a story that many people might be familiar with, one of the most read literary stories, myths of our time, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And as I said, this was something that I spent years on researching and trying to understand from the perspective of masculine energy. It's what my focus was, and reflecting for my own integration, for my own balance, for my own wholeness, to understand better about myself and what's happening in a way of the masculine energy being a block for me, I guess, is what I would say. I know that might sound strange if you think, well, you're not a man, or that's not what I'm talking about. As I've said, it has to do with balance of energy. And more, as we're moving into tumultuous times in our world and all different things that are going on with people, but also just collectively with tribulation, challenges with cultural differences, political differences, it's important to look at both sides of the coin, and reflect. Go inward, right? Take a look. Have a mirror. This is important. For right now, as we evolve into a new era of consciousness, which is really what I feel is happening. And what better way to move into that new era of consciousness than to focus on the breath? Nice, deep inhales and exhales. Conscious, intentional breaths. Do that with me a little bit here. Just feeling the energy shift as you take deep breaths. We can even do this physiological sigh. That's what it's called, where you go, right? At any point of any time of any day. Because we all have different things that we're moving through, having to overcome, or even to stay with it, right? Being able to stay with it. The breath can help us with that as well. So just moving into this story, and I'll try to keep this quick and help you understand that, we're not talking about so much power and control as what Epic of Gilgamesh is really about, but I want to bring this up because it's the loss of connection to nature. And Gilgamesh's long, arduous journey through the underworld has to do with experiencing grief that wakes us up. It's not about immortality. It's about being fully balanced and understanding things from both perspectives, from a wider perspective. And, kind of returning back to wholeness as a collective in our human race. And it's about what happens, too, with particularly the patriarchal and power and control today. And that also, when we recognize that the balance is really necessary, that there's not just one entity in control or one, country, or that there's these people that have dominance over our sovereignty, then when we recognize that, and we remember that the masculine and feminine energies are intended to be balanced, then we all return to wholeness. So breathe that in, right? Our sovereignty is our birthright. So I'll just kind of recap a couple of things here about Gilgamesh, and particularly in the Epic of Gilgamesh, about what happens when he wants to conquer the Cedar Forest. You have to recognize Gilgamesh is 2/3 divine, part God and part man. Very powerful king of Uruk. But power wasn't enough for him. He wanted to have dominance, control, and he wanted that in all aspects. And it wasn't just with like the over control of the feminine, but it was also control over the earth, over nature. And the Sumerians considered nature sacred, and the gods and the deities did as well. It was sacred, protected space that was guarded by the gods, and particularly the Cedar Forest was guarded by the giant Humbabu. So this was something that is really a long part of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Cedar Forest was considered divine. It was considered alive, conscious. It was an entity. And that to destroy that was to sever the connection that was natural. So now there's power and control over nature, over earth, right? We're seeing this still today, that there's this separation and power and control. We are not asking earth if we can take out what we need, or cutting down the trees that we still cut down in Oregon. I was just recently in Oregon, and you see this happening, and it's just insane, really. It feels quite crazy. I mean, there's some purpose to some of the necessary elements of needing these parts of our of nature, but also that there should be a interaction, communion, not just taking for the sake of taking. And in that way, then we still live in the shadow of what happened in ancient times in this part of the story, that the extractive, dominating version of this kind of masculine dominance still is conquering, right? Without reverence. And that this instills fear in people. So that's just one part, of the story that I wanted to bring up. And then there's also the part of where Gilgamesh is met with offer from the ancient goddess Inanna, who's queen of heaven and earth, to commune and bring the integration of masculine and feminine. That was the ritual that they performed every year, the New Year ritual, the union of the integration of masculine and feminine energies in a way that brings prosperity and connection to not only the divine, but to the earth, because this was based on the agriculture of their time. So they performed this ritual in the springtime, and it was meant to be a blessing of fertility. for the crops, so that people in the Sumerian culture thrived on what they needed in their everyday to eat. The food from growing plants and trees, and all of the vegetables that come from all different types of vegetation. And, like I said, this is necessary, but the Sumerians considered it sacred, whereas we have that discord now. We don't have that connection of reverence. Some people pray over their food, but, more and more that has been lost in generally in the human culture. So that was quite a discord when Gilgamesh rejected the ritual of the sacred union with Inanna, and then there was a incident that happened. I'm not going to go into all the details because I may have in another episode, but also I just want to keep this to the point, and that Gilgamesh then was kind of left in a mourning state because he was so separated and from the people, and he lost his best friend, so he was in a grieving process, and he went on this long search for immortality. But what he was really perhaps searching for was meaning, and he sees this meaning in his journey through connecting with who was the ancient flood survivor, who we consider Noah in the Bible, but it was Utnapishtim in the Sumerian culture that was granted immortality. And Gilgamesh was fearing death, right? He was fearing his mortality because he was only 2/3 divine. So that just tells you something too about our human perspective, and that many people still today are fearing death, right? That we don't believe that we continue forward, or that there's nothing more. There is no another realm of consciousness. There is just this end, death. But what I was saying in the episode last week, evolution is part of all of what we are, death and rebirth. It's just a continuum of energy. It's important to keep that in mind, especially if you're struggling with fear, and that we have the capacity to tap into other realms of consciousness. Again, when I mentioned holotropic breathwork, that's what holotropic breathwork allows us to do, is to access these other realms of consciousness. So, in the end, Gilgamesh doesn't reach eternal life, but he reaches humility. He reaches reverence, and he finds the sacred in just being human and connecting with nature. He finds that connection with the need to be interacted with the divine, the cosmic connection. And there's a lot more that's to be said about that. This is about all of us waking up to these deeper truths, and that in our everyday we maybe have people in power, in control, that we could maybe call a tyrant, or maybe somebody that just does whatever they want because they think that they are divine themselves, or somehow granted so much power and control and dominance that they can take away everyday sovereignty of people that could also be considered connecting to the cosmic realms. This is what's going on in the world. People are now connecting to other realms. I just want to briefly mention, as I had in the other episode, that I taught a 4-week course, so that's complete, on this connection of, our consciousness and what's happening archetypally, and that people are looking for something other, right? And they're looking for it in the cosmic realms. And there's connections. People are feeling really connected in a way that they hear. So we're talking about star seeds. We're talking about people that feel like they're hybrids, or even, psychics, mediums. There's so many names. This is all archetypal when we think about it. What is the myth of our time that we are creating now? So, so because we're remembering more, people are remembering, that's really what's happening, is that we are able to then recognize that we need integration. We need to connect with our inner feminine energy and masculine energy. We need to connect with the earth, and that we need to recognize there's this unity, there's no separation, that we are all here in union, in the collective, and that we should all have the same kind of understanding, the same mission, and same perspective would, I think, be super helpful. So, the perspective that the patriarchal era is over, that the masculine need to dominate is ridiculous, and that the masculine energy is really meant to protect us. That's the whole point, not to conquer, but to serve, to be in stewardship, and not to be cold, hardened, or put off, but to kind of bring around the arms of the container of the protector, and recognize that we can hold the balance of energies better when we do it in unison, when we do it together. So that's what I feel is happening right now, and that some men are feeling kind of vulnerable in all of this. They're not sure what it means. Are women taking over? And that's not the idea. Men are maybe a little bit, the word dismantled kind of came up into my brain, but then that is just because we're not told that these energies are important for our evolution and for our connections as a whole, for us to feel more whole, to feel confident, empowered, and be able to stay on track, to stay with it, to recognize, our purpose. And that men who are integrating their own feminine aspects are no longer considered weak. It's kind of like old myth. It's bygones, right? It's not considered weak anymore for men to tap into their own inner femininity, but more so as wise. It's considered wise nowadays. So I think now is a good time for me to bring up that I have a really important guest coming next episode who I just find so endearing. He is a messenger of wisdom and truth, and shares so much important information when it comes to the fact that we are sovereign beings. We have the capacity to be connected to the divine, to God. We are divine beings. He is the epitome of an integrated human being, recognizing both his masculine and feminine aspects and being able to dance in that so eloquently, and so not really easily, but he makes it look easy. So I don't really know what men perceive him that way, but I know that he is respected, and that his message is clear, and people are listening to his message. So I'm so honored to have him next episode and to have him share his perspective as a male of what it is like in this world today, in today's day and age, to be living in that integration of holding both the masculine and feminine energy and doing that balance. We're doing that with this sense of softness and strength when we're doing that dance, right? It's softness and strength is really, that's what the dance is. The masculine and feminine, softness and strength together. So before I close though, I want to just mention that all of this, what I'm talking about, is maybe some kind of unfamiliar language, but I really enjoy trying to make it familiar to people so that people can understand. And I'm teaching a course in November, which is in just a couple weeks, that's called The Power of Myth and Archetype, Awakening Cosmic Consciousness. It begins November 12th. It's a 4-week course. We're going to go into a lot of specifics and details. I talk about Jesus as an integrated masculine being that has a lot of his feminine qualities brought forth. Buddha, also a very strong masculine character in his wisdom, but then he goes inward often, right? The meditation, he brings himself to that inner space. And a couple of other different well-known beings like Osiris from the Egyptian era. So I hope you are interested in joining me for that course, and you can learn more about that at my new website that's called thegoddessbreath.com/courses. I'll have it in the show note. You can read more about that. And then lastly, I'm also offering a holotropic breathwork group session November 22nd in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's a one-day. If that interests you, then check that out as well. Or if you're interested in holotropic breathwork, do a search. There's people doing it all over the world, and I highly recommend it because it helps you resonating with some of these concepts based on what that internal experience brings forth. And that can even just be a body somatic kind of energetic experience as well. I want to say it's not always necessarily going to be in the visionary or archetypal perspective. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I just want to get you excited about this next episode. Again, Reverend John Scott, I'm just delighted to have him on and for him to share his perspective from a male's view of some of these things that I'm talking about to help people better understand and start to really embody that themselves as well. Whether you're female or male, you can understand and relate. So have a beautiful day. Blessings to you. Thank you so much for listening.